Okay, you are ready to go, Chair Armstrong.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Infrastructure Committee for March 30th, 2022. Time is 4 o'clock. And Madam Clerk, would you read any matters to get the meeting started?
Absolutely. Assembly Bill 361 suspends certain provisions of the Brown Act, allowing public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. At this time, I will conduct a roll and ask that the chair recognize me afterward to confirm certain matters for the record. Vice Chair Perkins.
Here.
And Chair Armstrong.
Here.
Thank you. Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all committee members can hear the proceedings clearly. And if there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each committee member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that the persons representing themselves to be committee members are in fact committee members. Thank you. Seeing no objections, I will turn the meeting back over to the chair with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to item 2, minutes approval. Item 2.1, the Infrastructure Committee regular meeting, February 28th of 2022 at 3 p.m. Do we have a motion?
I reviewed the minutes and recommend approval.
Okay. And if there's no further discussion, I take it that's a motion. I will second.
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Vice Chair Perkins.
Aye.
And Chair Armstrong.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 3, public comment. At this time, members of the public are encouraged to address the Infrastructure Committee on any item not already included in this afternoon's agenda. Members of the public who are participating via Zoom have the opportunity to make comments to the Infrastructure Committee live through the Zoom application. Comments should not exceed 3 minutes. As a reminder, no committee action can be taken at this meeting on issues raised during public comment, whether submitted by email or Zoom. To comment, please click the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone to request to speak. When it's your turn, you'll be unmuted and to make your comment for up to 3 minutes. After that allotted time, you will then be remuted. Madam Clerk, did we receive any written comments?
I don't believe so. Debbie, can you confirm? Yeah, no written comments were received for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, I will open public comment. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak on any items not on tonight's agenda?
It appears you have no requests to speak.
Okay, then I will close public comment. We'll move on to item 4, new business, the 5-year pavement management plan update, and turn that over to the staff for presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember Armstrong. This is Daniel Chavarria, Senior Civil Engineer, and with me presenting is Susie Edwards, Associate Engineer. And I'm pretty sure that Robin Bartlett will chime in as needed and any other staff member. If you can go back, Susie, to the first slide. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about the 5-year pavement management program plan, what we in short call it the 5-year PMP. And in previous years, we have started this presentation giving like a quick pavement 101. But this time we're going to skip that because, I mean, we have done it, I would say, for the last 4 years, and we believe that we've been, since we have repeat council members in the committee, we think that we can skip that. But if we need some refresher at the end, we have some slides if you need it. So we're going to go straight to the 5-year plan. Susie, can you go next, please? So part of this plan, we have incorporated some opportunities that we have taken advantage of. Some of them related with funding, specifically with a cash flow that from the State Transportation Improvement Program, STIP, that allow us to do some preliminary work for future years in the last 2 years. We also get some infusion of funds from the 2019 Certificate of Participation, COP. Then another opportunity we saw that it has allowed us to get some savings is that city staff has acted as a general contractor by hiring directly subcontractors and avoiding the markups that a general contractor would charge us. That not only have given us or provide us savings, but also in funding, but also in time, and it has given us or provided us flexibility, and has made the bid process a little bit more attractive for contractors in the way that they don't have to wait for subs to provide them quotes for our projects whenever they are very busy doing or providing a quote for different projects all over the Bay Area. We have also transitioned to do the plans and specifications and engineers' estimates in-house, which also has saved some funds and save some time. We have applied new treatments for the city of San Ramon that have provided us savings, and we have taken advantage of some grants, federal and state, for our pavement program. Next, please. That being said, that has come with some challenges at the same time. One of them that maybe is not in this slide is that by the staff becoming or doing the tasks that the general contractor usually do, that have created a time constraint for staff that in past years we would have spent in other responsibilities. Now we have to stretch our time and make sure that we can comply with all the responsibilities we have. One of the challenges, of course, is the streets condition is decreasing. I mean, we have aging streets moving past critical point. What a few years we have brand new streets now, they not that new anymore. The unit costs have been increasing, and as we all know, with all these increasing oil prices, definitely, since asphalt is a product of oil, definitely it's having an impact on the unit prices. We have incorporated green bike lanes, curb ramps, ADA curb ramps that are being paid by the pavement program. We also want to take care of all the low PCI streets, which are the most expensive streets to treat. Not yet included, but in the near future, we need to incorporate green infrastructure that also has to be paid by the pavement program, because there's no separate funding for that. And at the same time, even though the STIP was a good infusion of for cash flow, we now have to pay it back. And for that, we're using Measure J, which for the few years coming up, we won't see in our paving program, the Measure J funds. Next, please. You will see some maps further in the presentation, and here's a little bit explanation of the legend that you're gonna see. We have different categories in treatment: light maintenance, heavy maintenance, light rehabilitation, heavy rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Reconstruction is one category that we don't use in the city, except for the Alcosta Boulevard pavement project that we did last summer. That was the full depth reclamation that is also called out in this table. But if we go with one by one of the categories, the light maintenance, when we talk about light maintenance, we typically talk about slurry seals and microsurfacing. For heavy maintenance, we talk about cave seal and a slurry seal with dig outs. Same thing with microsurface with dig outs. For light rehabilitation, we talk about overlays and rubberized cave seals with digouts. And for heavy rehabilitation, we talk about overlays and thick milling fill. Next, please. The current conditions for San Ramon pavement system, you can see in this table by functional class, arterial, parking lots, collectors, and residentials, how many centerline miles we have per each of these classes, and the areas in square feet that they in their participation of the total of the overall system. You can see the percentages where 57%, 0.6 is residential, which makes the city, of course, mainly residential, but also arterials is 26% of the system. The average current PCI that for the city currently is 78, and you can see per functional class the PCI that we have. Next, Susie. Thank you. Moving on with the current 5-year plan with the 2022 update. The first slide, and I know it's a lot of information in that table, is mainly funding. I want to point out that these are projections. None of these numbers are actual yet, except for the 2022 and some of the 2023. And as I mentioned before, we don't know yet how the increase in oil and gas price is going to impact our program. But you could say that with more with the gas being more expensive, we could collect more money, but also there's some measures that the state or the federal government can take that might change things around. The two things that I want to point out in this table are that the main funding sources right now for the pavement program are gas tax, and the second one is a refuse vehicle impact fee. You can see the gas tax below the first blue cells, there's the first white cells, and you can see the total gas tax there. And below that is refuse vehicle impact fee. Those two funding sources are the main ones right now for the payment program. No general funds. And for Measure J, we won't receive Measure J funds for a while because we're paying back the STIP loan. Something else that I want to point out below those numbers, and if you go down where it says other funds, all those white cells, you can see that we have some utility companies in lieu payment that from PG&E and Comcast that they are doing extensive work in different neighborhoods in San Ramon, and we have discussed with them that they pay us in lieu for repairs of the streets whenever we see that we can do a better use of those funds. For them, it's savings because the contractor they would have to hire would charge them an expensive unit cost because the area is small. For us, we can incorporate those areas into our PMP projects and take advantage of the unit cost that we can get because of the quantities that we're bidding, and do that work and still utilize any savings for some other works like base repairs in the same areas. So basically, you could say that we can kind of playing with free money and trying to utilize it in a more efficient way. Below that, you can see the Cal Recycle grant that we received back for using rubberized cape seal. This type of grants is something that we can get when we're starting to use the rubberized cape. Now that we are planning to keep using that pavement treatment, not necessarily we're going to qualify for this grant anymore, because the way they see it is they want to stimulate the agencies to do this treatment, but once we start doing it, that's it. So the likelihood of getting more Cal Recycle grants similar to this one are going to start to be minimum. Then you can see below some reimbursements from utility companies. That is whenever we adjust their covers they pay us back for that work. And finally, and very important, is some savings that we got from the recent pavement projects, from the 2020 PMP, 2021 PMP, and the Alcosta Boulevard. And this savings is a combination of different factors that we presented in the first slides. I personally don't expect these savings to continue that high. It is gonna balance at some point, and that's why we are not counting with those in these projections, given also the uncertainty of the current market in the pavement industry. Next, Susie, and I think this
Before we
yeah.
go,
yeah.
In the gas tax, have we accounted for the increased revenue from the Costco gas station?
What happens is that the gas tax is not what we consume in San Ramon. It's consuming the entire state of California, and they distribute that based on the population. So even if all of us drive Teslas in San Ramon, we're still gonna get gas tax because somebody else in the state is gonna pump the gas in their vehicles. So not necessarily because we get more gas stations in San Ramon, we're gonna get more funds from the state.
Okay. So maybe Joe, you can help me. What do we get from the gas station, the Costco gas stations? Just sales tax?
I think so.
Okay.
That's a lot of money, though.
Yeah, 300, 400, maybe 500,000 in sales tax, but the gas tax is from there is zero. Well, because I would assume that one more gas station doesn't contribute to the consumption of gas throughout the state in a significant way. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So Susie will take over here for the maps. Go ahead, Susie.
I had to unmute myself. And sorry for any feedback that you guys get to listen to. So I'm going to go over the 5-year plan, the projected periods, and pretty much we've added on 2027. There's been a few changes, but not so many from the last 5-year plan. I just want to know that we're not like revamping the whole 5 years. So we've still taken, staff takes into account the critical point and the neighborhood areas, because you'll see here for the 2022 and the 2023, all the areas up here they'll show you on the map. Also, what we're doing now is alternating our rehab streets from our maintenance streets in years. So on even years, such as 2022, we'll be doing our rehabs, and then on 2023, we'll do the preventative maintenance. We're incorporating also the low PCI streets. So within that 5-year, any street that's falling into the low PCI, where staff is trying to include it within the projection of streets to treat. We're also including in utility work. So if there's extensive utility work, such as what Daniel was mentioning about Comcast and PG&E, we've also incorporated those into the plan, the in lieu fees. And so I'm going to go on to show you in the same 5-year plan. The only thing here that we're showing is that the maintenance streets outnumber the rehab streets in the city of San Ramon. City of San Ramon really has some nice streets. And that we're just grouping these maintenance streets from the rehabs. So in 2022, what we've done here is we've added in the Comcast work included in the neighborhood. So we have these streets and these. The Crow Canyon widening, we're going to have to work with that. And so we may have to move these streets around. We would like to do a smaller project with the maintenance because it's a rehab year. So we would do it with maintenance and throw that out separately. We've included some low PCI streets in here. And also in here, even though they're in the neighborhood, we're doing the 2022 with the 2023. So all the base failures that we would need to do to prepare for the 2023, we're going to take care of during the 2022. So it may look like, let me go back, it may look like we're only treating this street, but we're actually going to be in there doing base failure repairs and curb ramps for the 2023. And let me show you the 2023. So 2023, we've incorporated in so the PG&E. Now this one was already in the last year 5-year plan, the 2023. But PG&E has done some extensive work over here, so we've included that. We also moved from 2022 to 2023 these areas. Now, Alameda County is going to do some work on Crow Canyon Road. So we're going to work with Alameda County to rehab Crow Canyon Road from Bollinger to the city limit. This will be a cost effective for both, for our plan for sure. So we're going to move on to 2024. So in 2024, it's the same kind of thing. We have even year, it's going to be rehab. And the odd year, the 2025, is going to be the preventative maintenance. And I just want to point that out and reiterate, because we're trying to do the critical point, make sure that we're getting more bang for our buck. So we're hitting that 70 PCI basically and above with our preventative maintenance to keep those streets good. Now we have Crow Canyon Road, the added streets into this rehab was this area here, which may need to be moved because there might be some private entity that's going to do some development in the area. So we may not be able to coordinate at that time. Let's see. And here's our 2025, which hasn't changed much, except we did move some of the streets that were in the last year's 25-year plan out and moved them earlier, or we're moving them to 2026, maybe 2027 to do the neighborhoods, because we want to make sure we do these neighborhoods and these areas. It's just more cost effective for the contractors to come out if they're not bouncing over and doing smaller areas. Let's move on to 2026. And in 2026, I want to point out that this shows heavy maintenance, even though it's a rehab. But this is San Ramon Valley Boulevard, which is most likely going to end up with some sort of thin maintenance overlay or some sort of overlay or an inlay.
Yeah, there's particularly on the southernmost section where the elevation between San Ramon Valley Boulevard and the freeway below, I think contributes to some subsidence because there's long longitudinal cracks and some sideways dislocations. That may take a little extra engineering to help support it.
Yeah, the funding on that would be high for us to actually fix that, and Robin could probably speak to that. I believe that part of that is in Caltrans right away, maybe, or the cause of it could be in the Caltrans right away.
Cause is largely in Caltrans right of way. Yeah, you'd almost have to build retaining walls on Caltrans right of way in order to prevent it entirely. But unless we do at least something, you're still going to end up with the offsets going down there, and we got to do something.
Yeah. So since it's out in 2026, I'm sure we'll be looking into the design of that and seeing what we could do and what we could fund. Because sometimes maybe you can't fund something that would make a total fix, right? So you're going to look for something that maybe would last 20 years, or maybe it's going to last 15.
Yeah, well, we've got some special funding for sections of Al Costa in the past. So, hopefully there's some grant funding that might come along. So we might design it with that in mind.
I like it. Positive. Okay, moving on to 20. Oh, also I wanted to point out that Windermere Parkway up here. So this also a funding base. So it really is just, since it's out in 2026, we'll be able to tell better when we get closer if we'll be able to throw in Windermere Parkway or not. Move on. And then 2027, we have this whole area for maintenance. Now,
Wow.
this was just moved forward. Most of this area was already in the 5-year plan. It's just been moved forward to 2027 because there'll be a lot of base repairs and such going on. Also, that's why it says here the timing could vary for combined with other projects. So in case what happens in our 2026, we throw in the 2027 for making sure when we do our testing of the pavement to see if it's structurally adequate or not. So sometimes we have to move a 2027 street, we'll have to move to 2026 to move it out. May not be able to do a rubber cape on something and have to do an overlay. That would be an example.
Okay.
I would like just to point out, Susie, if you can go back, let's say to 2024. So as Susie mentioned, let's say in 2024, this is what we have planned to completely finish. But at the same time, as part of this project, the contractor that gets awarded with the contract not only would treat this street, but they would also do the base repairs of the streets in 2025. Can you show that, Susie, please? So like that is all this area. Typically, or before we start implementing this type of a plan, the contractor that would do a project like here show in 2025, there is a maintenance or contractor, let's say on the slurry seal microsurfacing type of contractor. Typically, what they would do is subcontract the type of contractor that worked in the previous year to do all the base repairs. And they charge us a markup for that. But not only that, that makes them, their bidding process a little bit more complex because now they have to coordinate with that contractor to get a quote, apply the markup and charges, and probably show up at the bid opening, see who else is bidding, and at the moment just increase or decrease their costs because they know who's bidding with them. That's the reason why all contractors present their bids exactly at the 2 minutes before the due time. So, but by us doing the base repairs the previous year and also the curb ramps, we take that element out of the bids. So the bidder now only focus on what they control, their operation, which makes it easier and faster for them to bid. That's why we're getting more bids nowadays than previous years, because the contractors, they don't have to spend too much time waiting for other subs. Number one. Number two, we eliminate the markups. And number three, we control the timing of everything. Now, before, we had to do all these, the curb ramps, the base repairs, and the final work and striping in the month of this, in the limited time of summer, right? So all these activities. Now, by splitting this, we can do that before the summer, and it makes the, as I said, a more flexible type of bid for the contractors. So that's why we're working in 2 years. Just to give you an idea, if you see the area in blue here that is close to a Dory Road or parallel to Dory Road in Old Ranch Road, the blue areas. I don't know, I don't have the cursor. I don't know if Susie.
You're talking about here?
Yeah, right there, that area there. Last year, we were showing these areas in 2024. Mm-hmm. Now we have to move them, not because we don't like the neighborhoods or we don't like the residents there, is because it's more cost efficient. We know that we're going to have a treatment that fits in this type of year treatment. So we move them, we push it back 1 more year, but that doesn't mean that we're going to wait until 2025 to do some work there. The neighborhood is going to, in 2024, a year prior, they're going to see the construction of curb ramps, they're going to see localized base repairs, and they're going to see a lot of crack sealing. They're not going to like it because it's not the final product, but when they start calling us like that happened in 2020, and we explain to them that we're going to finish the work the next year, it definitely takes away a lot of anxiety from the residents. And so this work, even though it's showing 2025, will start in 2024.
Okay. Something Is Robin on the line here? I don't see his picture. Yeah,
Yep.
there he is.
I'm here.
Yeah, Robin. And something, Robin and I worked with Robin, oh gosh, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it was, at places where we have 2 through lanes, and then we have a right turns and left turns. We took and we shifted the through lanes and the left turn just a little bit, and we allowed the curbmost location where the bike lane is to be a little bit wider. We did that at Bollinger, or at San Ramon Valley Boulevard northbound at Bollinger, and it really helps the traffic flow for those people that want to turn right and then get onto the freeway. So we in effect widened the bike lane, so it's clearly wide enough for, you know, vans and small, you know, utility trucks and things like that. So people don't feel they have to wait for that rightmost through lane to be clear before they can move forward. I'd like to encourage you, wherever you have 2 through lanes and a right and a left turn lanes, that you adjust the striping as we go through, and so it encourages those right turn people who use the right turn curb. You remember what I'm talking about, Robin?
I do know what you're talking about, and yeah, that's a good and important detail, and goes to even a larger point that as we do all of this work, we work with the traffic engineering group to make sure that all of the striping that needs to be updated is updated. And that's where you see a lot of the striping associated with new bike lanes being improved during this same process.
Yes, I just used that San Ramon Valley Boulevard northbound to Bollinger eastbound as an example, because that is, when we widened it by probably only maybe 18 inches, maybe it was 2 feet, but it was probably only 18 inches. That was enough visual expansion of that lane that people were then frequently using that right without having to wait behind the through lane people to get to clear, even though they had 2 feet to the right of them clear.
I think the new and improved version of that you can see is at the Bishop Drive and Sunset, where we have the green bike box, and so you'll see that kind of thing being the new version of a through route for the bicycles to allow the right turn lane.
Excellent. Yeah, whatever we can do to be, help out the bicycles, and I see there's lots of opportunities here that we're going to be able to do that for bicycles, but this also helps the traffic flow as well. Yes. Something that I noticed when we put those great big green, I guess you call them sharrows, on Montevideo, I actually got some comments back that said, do we really need that many? They seem like they're only 100 feet to the next one, and then there's 100 feet, and then there's 100 feet. It seems like they are. The feedback I got was we overdid it. And I don't know what the standard is for putting those things down, but I'd like staff to review the standard and see if it's necessary to put that many. You know what I'm talking about, Mark, as you drive down Montevideo?
Oh, I got the same comment.
Yes, yeah. Okay. I think we probably got twice as many on there as we need, and they got to cost something. So I just recommend staff look at those, and if we can cut back and still be compliant, I'd like to.
Will do.
Okay. I want to just point out that, and Susie, if you don't mind going back to 2022, this year's project. So talking about green bike or the bike lanes, as part of the COP funds that we receive, we we incorporated the bike lanes for Dory Road and Bollinger Canyon.
Right.
So the reason these two streets, we pavement wise, we had these streets scheduled for next year and even one year later. However, we wanted to coordinate with the bike lanes because the funds expire. We have to install these bike lanes, and we didn't want to pay one time for the bike lanes, come back a year or two later to do the payment and paying again the bike lanes and spend quite money. So that's why we push it forward. However, and I want to point this out. There's always a trade-off. Nothing is free. So the challenge we face now, and that we're working on it, is that with the Crow Canyon Road widening project starting this year, we're going to have definitely an area in San Ramon that is going to be under construction in different streets. And we are coordinating with that project. The contractor for the Crow Canyon widening is working on the schedule. Once we have the schedule, we're going to set the schedule for these other two streets in a way that we don't work or we don't affect traffic as much as, or we impact traffic as minimum as possible.
Okay. Now, we pointed this out the other night when we were talking about I guess it was at the goal setting and bike lanes. And these two streets are two of the streets that have 50-mile-an-hour speed limits. And so we wanted to make sure we do what the most that we can to protect cyclists in the design and implementation of the bike lanes along them, because those are two of the then the extension down in Dougherty is the other 50-mile-an-hour section. So those are the three sections that have, fortunately, the southern part of Dougherty there doesn't have as much traffic, but it certainly goes fast.
Very fast. They call that down there the Doherty Speedway.
Well, isn't that where we got the guy doing 100 and some miles an hour just the other day?
I don't know.
I thought the PD said they got somebody doing over 100 miles an hour on that section of Doherty Road. I can see why.
And just to point out, you'll see some evolution in these bike lane configurations over time. This question also arose on Crow Canyon Road, as you may recall, when we were awarding that project. And that's one of those elements where things like delineators can be installed at a later date. But we want to do the fundamentals with these projects.
Good. You know, I saw can you go back to the graph that shows the PCI and how it deteriorates over years?
We got to get to that yet.
Oh, we haven't gotten to it yet. Okay. All right. I thought we passed it.
Susie, do you want to continue the 2020? I think you left it on 2026, 2027.
That's where I left it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where we are.
Yeah, we've talked about this one. Okay, there we go. You know, interesting thing. Robin knows and Maria knows I've been with you guys for almost 20 years doing this, and the graph looks the same. It always shows doom and gloom, kind of like the financial graph. And somehow, fortunately, if you went back far enough, you'd see that we managed to stay above, I think above 77 year after year after year. Is that pretty much true, Robin?
Yes. And for this year, there's an explanation that there's two factors that are helping us bump back up from 78 to 79 and then stay there. And that is the injection of the STIP funds and the COP funds. So what we're seeing with that STIP fund, that was a joint funding deal that helped replace lost Measure J cycle 3 and 4, I believe it was, for the bridge. and then also gave us a surge of funding based off of that Measure J money to help us do preventative maintenance now while it was at that critical point. And so we see this bump coming up now, but of course we lose the money in the back end, which is where we contributes to this decline. Although, again, one of the reasons these things don't change that much is they're just not very strongly influenced by the amount of money you do put in. You're looking at about $2 to $3 million per point change per year. And so it does take a fair amount to change it one way or the other.
Right after this meeting, I'm going to chair the TVTC Finance Committee meeting. And the Finance Committee meeting, I expect that they will endorse the Tri-Valley Transportation Development Fee Program and then pass it on to the full board. Should that be the case, I expect that in the middle of April, just 3 weeks away, we will endorse the strategic expenditure plan. And I've mentioned this a couple of times. It's $2.28 million for the Iron Horse Trail Bridge at Bollinger. And so if the bridge comes in at or below its projected cost, that $2.28 million can be used to offset some of the money that the city has actually put into it going forward. Now, if we approve that on April 18th, then each of the agencies involved have to approve it as well. There's 7 of us, but they only have to approve the fee program. And in order to collect the money, they have to approve the fee program. So I expect to have all 7 agencies approve the fee program. And then in July or August, talk with Lisa and find out when to send the letter requesting that the TVTC distribute the 2.28 million, because it is scheduled for the next fiscal year, the 22-23 fiscal year. So I'm sure you guys will work with Lisa to figure out when to send the letter, when to get the money, and how that affects the financing of the bridge. And is there an opportunity then to claw some money back to the city? But we shall see. So there's a whole bunch of steps, but time does move on, and we should know by middle of April or 18th of April whether it'll pass the way it is.
And we have been conservative in our assumptions here that either we won't get the money, or the money will get consumed by the bridge, or something like that, knowing that if we get it, it's only to the good from what you see here. And so you would see more streets done, and that would, I don't know that would be enough to lift us into an 80 category, but we would at least see an extension more likely of the 79 out one more year and push the whole graph off to the right in keeping us at a higher level for a little bit longer.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the trend I've seen over the last decade or so, is we've been able to keep in that 77 to 79 range. I'm not hard over on trying to get to 80, but I feel very strongly we need to keep above 75. And the only way to really keep above 75 is to not touch it, because as you touch it, it's got momentum. And momentum will ultimately drag us down. But I thank you very much for the presentation. This is what I expect to see, and I'm glad to see we're making some progress on our goals, and you've got a good plan. I like the way you're kind of separating the projects to help the contractors, which also helps us. It probably brings you now. The one downside, of course, is it takes a little more staff time to do this. But I'm hoping that that additional staff time is more than compensated by the better bids we get.
Yeah, it's worked out quite well. I think, you know, the other advantage is we're saving on this consultant design cost. And so that more or less compensates for our staff time. And then the net benefit to the city is from all the other savings we see on various elements of the construction.
And how many more slides do we have?
I think we have 4 more.
Okay.
4 or 5 more. So, well, some of the challenges in a 5-year plan definitely is keep treating the low PCIs in every single plan, because as I mentioned, low PCI streets are the most expensive streets to treat. In this specific 5-year plan, we're talking about or over $7.5 million in expenses. Other elements that reduce funds from the PMP is the curb ramp construction, the sidewalk repairs, the bike lanes, the green infrastructure, and well, right now we're talking about inflation, changing the standards, changes in funding, things that are out of our control. Next, please. We have implemented, as we said, cost-saving measures that we plan to continue implementing, like getting bids for asphalt and preventive treatment separate, also doing the concrete work ahead of time and directly with the contractors to avoid markups and have more flexibility in timing. We're going to continue evaluating new pavement technologies. And one of them, of course, has been the rubberized Cape Seal that has provided us a lot of savings. And we're going to share a little bit more in the next slide. And finally, being more flexible with the specifications of work hours. For giving an example, Alcosta, and also closing some lanes to allow the contractor to move faster. That provide us better bids and also a faster construction time, that if we know already that it's going to impact the community and traffic, we want to make it as short as possible. Next, please. Going back to the rubberized Cape Seal, we have seen some cost savings in the range of 40 to 45% compared to overlays. And we could reduce the cost of overlays by 20 to 25%. That's what is allowing us to do more streets. It doesn't apply to every street that requires an overlay, though. It's just we have found candidates and we have implemented there, but there are some streets that definitely the best treatment is an overlay, mainly because there are some structural deficiencies and the rubberized scale would not cut it. We need to add more asphalt. Next, please. And going to the slide that I think a lot of us agree that is the most important one for us in the engineering division is considering setting a target of a minimum range of PCI for the city. We believe that between 75 and 80 would be a good range, but it's definitely, we've been close to 80, as a council member Perkins already mentioned, but it's going to decline sooner or later. If we don't get any additional funding, definitely is going to decline starting in 2024. So that's one of the things that we would like to discuss, and if that's the case, beginning the consideration of financing mechanisms to support this minimum PCI level.
Yeah, and let me just dive in here because I'd talked about this last year and suggested that we have that floor of 75. And this year I'm talking about more of a range because I know there is that desire to keep it as high as possible. And also perhaps it gives a little bit more clarity to the intent here. The intent is to keep the roads as good as possible, because as good as possible also means the maintenance is as cheap as possible. But it does make sense to have an operating range. We want to stick to that critical point methodology. which means having the room to maneuver in a range so that you're doing streets that are close to that critical point as opposed to just sticking to an arbitrary number. So this range would keep our streets in the good category and give us some flexibility while I think achieving that goal of keeping them as good as possible. And to pick up on what Daniel was saying, the big concern about this is that we do project that long-term decline. Yeah, we've done a variety of things, and we're still seeing things such as this cost savings manifest itself in being able to do more with the same funding. And occasionally we've seen these injections of other funds, the COP, the STIP, that have come to our rescue and help keep things going. The problem is that if we come to the point where we need to find alternative funding mechanisms, that is something that takes years to plan. And we want to keep that on the radar, that there's this potential problem. And if we're really sticking to some number, let's say 75, we are going to come up to that point where we're running up against it. And we want to plan for that as far ahead as possible.
I agree that to aim for a very precise number and stick to it is really, really hard. And you tend to overshoot in one direction or the other. And so I like the idea of having a range of 75 to 80 and recognize that when we get to 76, we need to make sure that in the future, we've got plans to get it so it stays above that minimum. It's kind of like the reserves. You know, we set a reserves for 36%. And while there are occasions where we might draw down below 36%, we always have to recognize that we have to have a plan to get us back above the reserve. And so we want to have a plan in place to make sure we can stay above the 75 and we don't find ourselves at 74 looking up. Right now, we're probably in the top 15% of cities. We've been touching, you know, up at the top 10%, and we seem to be just under that, but that's all right. I like what we're doing. I think we're applying the right level of rigor to our plans. And I like the thought processes you guys are giving to adjust the way we contract. And if we can get an extra 5 or 10% out of our dollars by doing that, that's fabulous. And if we can get 15 or 20%, that's remarkable. You know, that I do appreciate the efforts going into this.
Before you have to sign off here, Vice Chair Perkins, let me see if you've got any more questions, because I want to do the final discussion. We do have, I want to give a public an opportunity to comment, and then we'll start wrapping this up. Any further questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Then at this time, I'd like to see if there's any public comment on this item. I'll open the floor for public comment. Okay, I am not seeing any, so I'll close public comment. Okay, back to discussion, and I'll just say that I am also, I remember this discussion last year on the minimum of 75, and I wasn't a big fan of that. I'm much better off with this range of 75 to 80. I think that provides some additional flexibility. I think that's a good way of going forward. I did want to bring something up though, in a kind of going through the staff packet and some of the previous slides. There was a note that the current residential average PCI was 79%, and that's really good. I mean, that's great, especially because that's the majority of our pavement area. But I also looked at there was a chart that showed some of our 2022-23 projects, and it had to do with our CIP, the 00005 and 8. And there was 7 residential streets that were either at or projected to have a PCI in the 30s. And you know, which struck me as what, you know, how did we allow that to kind of get down that far? But regardless, I also saw that we had some city-owned parking lots that were in the high 70s or even in the 80s that might get treated in the next year, or at least in the next 5 years under this program. So my concern really is that these parking lots, city-owned property, commercial streets that may be degrading. They're obviously highly visible, highly trafficked, and can be annoying if you run into one of those streets. But some of these residential streets are either in that fair or poor or very poor condition, and those become public safety issues. And I mean, for example, a young kid riding a bike and he hits a pothole or a crack in the street and he busts his front teeth out. And so to me, this is just another aspect of, protecting our neighborhoods. And so it's kind of an important thing to me. To me, it would be nice to see a policy statement of some kind, perhaps in the 5-year plan, that says something like that. If all things are equal between our city-owned properties, parking lots, commercial streets, that sort of thing, and residential, if everything else is equal, then the priority would go to the residential streets. It's kind of like in baseball where, tie base goes to the runner kind of thing. I don't know how we say that. I don't know if that is really practical to have something like that in there, but I just want to throw that out there for potential consideration. Otherwise, I like this critical point approach. I like the implementation strategies. I like this range that you've discussed there. Not a big fan of some of the things, the potentials of potential tax measures and that sort of thing. I'd rather find the creative general fund adjustments or exploring new technologies and this, like the rubberized cape seal that you were talking about, other funding mechanisms and the like. So with that, I'll see Vice Chair Perkins, you got any final comments? I know you got to run.
No, I thank staff for doing a really fine job and making a good presentation. I'm glad we kind of skipped over pavement 101 and get right to the 5-year plan. That's great. Make it so.
Okay. Any other final comments from staff, or do you need anything else from us? We didn't provide a whole lot. I would like you to take a look perhaps at this, prioritization, if all things are equal, and maybe we can talk about that at a later date.
I think I understand your objective there is, if you're having to make a choice between a treatment type and you have a pool of candidate roads or parking lots, you would prefer to see the treatment go to a public road than a parking lot, if I understand it.
Well, certainly
all else being equal.
Residential, certainly a residential,
all else being
rather
equal.
than a major arterial or something like that. Yeah,
I gotta go.
All right, thank you for joining us. Okay, thank you, Robin, and for everyone else, if there's nothing else, I think we have kind of covered the committee member comments, and I don't know that we have any unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Okay. Missing a committee member, I think it's time to adjourn. We are adjourned to a future date to be determined. I think we've got something getting set up for the April timeframe, but I'll look for the final notice on that.
Yes.
Okay, thanks everybody. Good
Thank you.
presentations today.
Thank you.
Thank you.